Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. We're so pleased to host this Center for Sport and Social Justice event today. We've got a wonderful film today, Futbolistas for Life. My name is Matthew Atencio. I'm a professor in kinesiology. I'm the co-director of the Center for Sport and Social Justice. And if you haven't heard about us, please check us out. We're on Facebook. We're gonna be on Instagram soon. Twitter, we're trying to get those things going. But please come check us out. We have a website from the Cal State University platform. You can click on that too and learn more about our previous events, how to support the Center for Sport and Social Justice. This is my co-director, Dr. Missy Wright. And she will be doing the Q&A after the film ends. So let me just kind of give you a little précis about the film, and then I'm going to turn this over to the director, June Stinson, who will share a few words about coming in and creating the film and the context of the film. Futbolistas for Life is a story of local youths in Oakland and Fruitvale and their struggles with U.S. immigration policy. But it also explores, and this is important, the role of soccer and football to provide joy and community for these young people despite these difficult circumstances for themselves, for their schools, for their families, okay? And we're so pleased to have the director of the film, June Stinson. So please, June, come on out. We'll share, again, a lot of things before and after the film. And we also have two of the main cast members, Dania, Cabello. Dania, please come on out. Who, by the way, is an amazing freestyle soccer player. We had a great session out there in the quad before we came in, so thank you, Dania. And we have Mr. Gonzalez, who is also featured in the film. Before I keep going, I want to make sure that I say thank you to a lot of different people. These kind of events take a lot of support and resources. People around this campus have been really wonderful. And first I'm going to thank the Department of Kinesiology, Chair Department Paul Carpenter is here in the crowd, and thank him. College of Education and Allied Studies, a lot of people to thank over there, June LaHaron, Julie Milkey, and other people that have helped us pull off this event. Glenn Brewster, who is in the room, Chad Foster on the technical side, and Richard Olmstead, who is also a big part of making sure this runs really smoothly. So we're really thankful for that help we get on campus. And also want to thank, you'll notice some young people around the room, ushering, setting up the event, being part of, we had a lunch beforehand, and really being some really committed students. The Center for Sport and Social Justice has a student club. Again, something else that you want to get involved with. We've got great officers this year, and I want to thank them. They're also in the room today. And then I'll just give you a quick sort of outline for today. I'm going to turn over to June Stinson very, very quickly here. The film is about 39 minutes, so we'll show this. And again, we're really fortunate to have this film here on our campus. After the film, we will do a Q&A session, so please make sure you've got questions and notes that you're burning to ask for our panel here today. And we should be out of here right about 4 o'clock, okay? So before we go further, I want to pass the mic to June Stinson, who's going to share, again, that kind of background of coming into this and what it meant to make this film. And then once we're done with that, we'll fire up the film. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. Hello, everyone. I'm June. I just really want to thank all of you for being here today. A huge reason why I made this film was to be able to show it to so many students like all of you. I grew up in Oakland, and I've been coming out here to Cal State East Bay, which I know as Cal State Hayward as a kid, for over 30 years. So it's really special for me to be back here screening this film for all of you. And the Center for Sport and Social Justice, I was just reflecting on this today, has really been a huge supporter of me and my work for the last 10 years that I've been making documentary films. And Rita Liberty, I don't know if you're in the audience somewhere, but I mean, it really started when I was a grad student at Berkeley and I was making a film called The 90th Minute, which was about FC Gold Pride, one of the top women's pro soccer teams in the world in 2010, and they practiced right here at Cal State East Bay. And I reached out to Rita, and you know, she was just a huge supporter, watching cuts and advising me while I made that film. And years later, because of that film, I was screening it around the Bay, and I happened to meet Dania. I was reaching out to amazing pro women's soccer players in the Bay Area. Someone introduced me to Dania. She started speaking on panels that I was having with the film, and I got to know how incredible of an educator she is, and the work that she was doing at Life Academy that you'll see in the film. And so that first film I made, the support of the Center for Social Sport and Social Justice, really led into this next film, this film that you'll see today. And then, you know, I think it was like years later when Becky Beal, who's in the audience somewhere, reached out, and we started to collaborate together. She was a huge supporter of the film and wanting to, you know, just get involved and support me as I tried to reach the finish line as an independent filmmaker, which is not an easy task. I can talk to you guys a little bit about it later, where you're doing all that, you're pitching, you're writing grants, you're fundraising, you're building a team. And so this film, you know, took me 5.5 years to complete. And I could not have done it without the support of so many people in the community and for organizations like the Center for Sport and Social Justice. So I just want to say, like, this feels almost like a family to me in some ways. And so I just want to thank Missy Wright and Matt Atencio for coordinating this afternoon's event. This film is just incredibly meaningful to me as someone who grew up in Oakland, as someone who had like really powerful role models and mentors similar to Dania in my life. When I learned about this story, I just felt like I had to tell it, someone had to tell it, and I had the skills and the tools to do so. And so that's why I dove in, and it's been, you'll see in the film, but it's just been an absolute honor to get to know Ben, who's one of the students you'll meet in the film over, you know, now it's been like 7 years. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll be available afterwards to answer any questions. Thank you.
Get the lights and the film can begin. Thank you. Okay, folks, such a powerful movie. We're going to have a Q&A session here for about 40 minutes. If you have some questions, you can shout out from the seats, or if you prefer, you can use the microphone on this side over here. So whatever you prefer to do. And Dr. Missy Wright will lead the Q&A.
Thank you. All right. What do we think? Do we enjoy it?
Yeah.
I can start off a question as you all are preparing yours. I guess a question I have for June. Oh, wait, do we have one?
Yeah, be right here, Dr.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
All right. So my question is, I noticed in the beginning of the video, the school only consists of 250 students, and everybody applies for either free lunch or reduced lunch. So does that have anything to do with the revenue in schools? All the different the tools that they're given. At school, I know some parts of the school seem like it just turned down and worn down. So I just want to know, how does that play part?
So talking about the tools or the resources the schools have? Is that your question?
Kind of more so understanding, does the school not getting any revenue? How does the revenue work with the school since you're not getting any money from you're giving away free lunches or reduced lunches? So how does that play a part in the revenue for schools?
Okay, that's a good question. So the school is part of Oakland Unified. And so as we know, budget cuts, program cuts, the school does operate with like a really, really tight state budget. And a lot of times, because small schools can find innovative ways to kind of move some funding for this one thing over here, but the reality is that what mostly gets cut are the health, wellness, fitness programs, the things that the students, like, everyone needs it, but they really need it. When you noted that their free and reduced lunch is really much a reflection of the community, the economic realities of the families that, you know, can't necessarily all send $10 a day in the students' lunches for lunch. So yeah, the free and reduced lunch is definitely reflective of the lack of resources in addition to, you know, to that school.
Thank you.
Yeah, down here.
June, how did you come upon meeting Dania? How did that all start?
Yeah, so I mentioned this a little bit before the movie, but it actually kind of came out of a short film that I did when I was a grad student, which was about a women's pro soccer team called FC Gold Pride that happened to play right here at Cal State East Bay. And I did a 20-minute doc about this team because they were one of the top teams in the world and hardly anybody knew about them, including here in the Bay Area. And I actually, a huge reason I did the film was because I didn't even know about them until I did. And that was around the time that I was going into my second year in this doc program and was thinking about a good story to tell. And that team ended up folding, and I did this short film that I was screening around the Bay. And I was looking for women pro soccer players or former soccer players who were in the Bay Area who could speak on panels that I was organizing, and someone invited Dania to one of the panels I was having, and so I got to know her through that, and I was just really blown away by everything that she had to say, and as I got to know her as an educator, just really interested in the work that she was doing in Oakland. So she ended up inviting me to screen my film to her students who are the Futbolistas. And that's when I got to know Life Academy that I knew. I knew that school, that building, Calvin Simmons, my whole life. I had driven by Calvin Simmons since I was a kid. So just being part of the community, I was really interested when I learned that students like Ben had organized this campaign for a field in response to a number of deaths that had happened in the community. And so I followed. I didn't start right away. I had learned about these students through Dania, and I was just keeping tabs on what was happening. And unfortunately, after that evening when I shared my film at Life Academy, a number of other students had been shot and killed. And I had, just by opening up the paper, reading online, I'd learned about these deaths. And I had stayed connected with Dania and other teachers at Life Academy. And ultimately that summer, when you saw a list of names at the end of the film, and those were all the students that had died in the making of this documentary. And one of those students was Alejandro Aguilera, who you saw photos of in the film, and he had been shot and killed probably the beginning of the summer that I decided to make this film. And it was really that his death and witnessing how the school community was processing and healing over his death that made me feel very compelled to do more than as a freelance journalist. At the time I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll write a story or I'll do a radio story. But then I just felt really compelled to do something more than that. And that's when I talked to Dania and told her that I was interested in making a film. So.
Yeah, in the back.
Hi, I'd love to hear more about the structure of the program itself. There's clearly like multiple components, the actual soccer practice element, and then this sort of discussion, social justice element, and like how do you structure to have both of those elements and keep students engaged in both of those elements?
That's a good question. Well, so like you saw in the film, we didn't have a real place to play. So in many ways, that kind of freed up what we could do. I didn't have to worry about training the next superstar team to compete against another team. And so that limitation actually ended up being something that freed us up to be a little bit more creative. And so we structured it how we decided. And Ben was actually my co-educator. He was my youth leader of the class, and we would prepare lessons together. And so it was structured that the first hour of the program was some sort of dialogue-based, interactive kind of game, think outside the box around issues related to sport, soccer, play, and then we would go play. And oftentimes, like our play, there was some theme that was relevant for the day, and the games that we played would kind of carry that theme into practice.
Just kind of piggybacking off this last question, you're working with a lot of younger kids. Do you ever feel like you're having issues keeping them focused on everything at hand that you're trying to bring across, so it's not just the play time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then I'm going to ask Ben a question about that. Totally, yeah. Sometimes they're just like, ball, play, like stop. But there's also really something personal. And like a lot of coaches, in my experience, never really asked their players, like, what is your experience? What's your reality? And what reality would you like? And how could we build that, create that together? So yeah, we were talking about some big world issues, but it always centered on real life experience. So like when we did the campaign and they had to research information, it came from their own curiosity. I gave them a statistic about school sports, and then they did a little bit of research to figure out where they even fit, and then they realized on their own, we don't even have that opportunity to benefit from these statistics because we can't even field the team because we have no field. And so it was like the motivation came from within them, not necessarily, yeah. But I am curious to hear from Ben. What did you think of this?
I think for her being a teacher, I think one of the things I learned, because I ended up teaching after I graduated from high school, was it was very important the relationships you have with kids. Especially Dania, I think she cared more about you and then the class later. I think that kind of made me feel like, oh shit, like she really cares about me, you know? And I think that's how everyone felt at some point of the class, you know, like in their own personality, in their own circle, you know? So that kind of, I learned that, you know, when she's teaching class and you kind of hear her asking questions in a lot of classes, when a teacher asks a question out there in the air, nobody answers. Literally, it just stays quiet. There you hear like kids kind of like throwing answers out there. I think it was like kind of like the relationship that they had, that energy in that classroom. You know, they had a story, and then it wasn't just about soccer. I mean, it was more like family, like, you know, it was like very supportive. And there was a point of my life in high school when I would not show up to class because I would just be like doing some other senseless stuff. Or if I would show up, it would be like when soccer was about to start, you know, which it wasn't the best, but then, you know, things changed, and then I saw the positive way of it, and then, you know, I became a youth leader, and then you know, I ended up teaching my class for the school program, and then I ended up getting a job after high school, and then kind of just, that's where my career kind of started. So yeah, now we're here, but it's very important to, if you are teaching, to make that kid feel special and that you care about him. I learned that when I was teaching too. And it's not just that, but I teach with newcomers, so a lot of them would not speak the language, but they knew I care about them. And we had a badass team, you know? So even that was not an excuse. Like I had teachers that would just teach the class and, all right, next period. But teachers like her were very special, like they care about you.
Just to add on to that, as a filmmaker who was just kind of in and out of classrooms at Life Academy for many years, I mean, I can say Life Academy High School has absolutely incredible teachers. But there was something really special about how Dania was able to connect with students and vice versa. And I think Ben just shared that, you know, with you, is that she deeply cared about each individual student she was working with. And, you know, I just want to mention, as a filmmaker who was just in the classroom behind the camera, had no connection, you know, to the school really before I started. That was something that I most definitely observed throughout my time making this film. Can I just mention one more thing? I have a sign-up sheet going around. I don't know who has it now, but if you don't mind adding your email address, you can get updates to the film, or I have contact information on there too if you want to reach out to us individually afterwards.
I have a question for Don. Are you still currently coaching the Futbolistas? And if you are, since the field has been established, how big has the program gotten?
I like this question. I still am involved in coaching. I do not coach at Life Academy. Somewhere along the journey of the film being made, I left Life Academy to return to graduate school to actually write my master's around the pedagogy that we were kind of implementing together. And so when I left, the field was built, and then we had what we had hoped for, which was soccer teams. And so the Futbolista program, to go back to one of the first questions, that structure dissolved because now there were teams and there was training and there was a set schedule, boys teams, girls teams, middle school, high school, coordinating the field use. And so the program, in the way that I had set it up, dissolved. I now am actually here today because of the work that I continue to do around sports, liberatory pedagogy. And so while I don't do it explicitly at Life Academy, I do it at St. Mary's College where I teach. I do it with violence prevention organizations where I write curriculum for coaches to begin to think about how you think about freedom through play. And I do it in many different ways. One of the things, the unintended consequences of building the field and having the teams is that there was an issue where in order to fund like the cleanup of the field, the maintenance, the previous director had started renting the field in the evenings to a private soccer club from Orinda or Walnut Creek that would come, and so like at 6 p.m. when the sun would go down, all the Life Academy and community members would get kicked off the field, and other kids would get bused and shuttled over for their paid practice, which was the complete antithesis to why we built this in the first place. So it's interesting to see how that contradiction is still there. Fortunately, the new administration changed the keys, canceled that contract with that private soccer club, and was like, no, this is not going to happen. So that's kind of a little mini where that's at and where I'm at.
I was also going to mention that one thing on top of what Dania said is, you know, once they got the field, there's the whole like need to maintain a turf soccer field. And so there are definitely challenges that, the school faces in terms of needing to keep the field clean and to maintain the turf. And so unless there's money to do that, it's really hard to sustain the field, a turf field over the long run. Yeah.
Out of all the students featured in the film and in the program, how did you decide which student stories to focus on and highlight?
Yeah, it was really hard. So as an independent filmmaker with minimal resources and minimal time, I was freelancing at the time, but I was juggling the film with other jobs that I was doing. And in an ideal world, I would have been able to follow multiple students and then, as a storyteller, perhaps end up deciding in the edit room which stories I was going to focus on. With the resources that I had to make a decision early on that I really only was capable of following 2 students, and so I had to decide who those 2 students would be. And I wanted, there were only 3 girls in the program, and so it was important for me to represent at least one of them. And I also wanted to, it wasn't, all the students in the Futbolistas for Life program were representative, obviously, of the kids at that school. So it wasn't, I could have told any of their stories and they would have been very much representative of the entire, of the school population. But at that time, Obama had recently passed DACA. And so when I had learned about Ben's story from speaking with teachers at the school, I was really interested in where he was headed and what his journey that year would be. And so that was one of the reasons I spoke to Ben and asked if he was interested. On top of that, I spent time speaking with a lot of teachers about the students, including Dania. But on top of that, Ben was just an amazing guy. And so, they're like, you want a guy who's gonna be great on camera and really, be articulate, Ben's wonderful. And then I got to know him, and sure enough, I felt the same way. But I did take time to get to know multiple students and interview them. And it was a process for me to decide who to focus on. And part of it was the students being okay with me having having a camera in front of their face, right, following them about at school. And April, in some ways it was a simpler decision with the girls because 2 of the girls just really didn't want to be on camera. And then April was just incredible from the get-go. She was like a born leader. As soon as I met her, she had this dynamic charisma, and she was a first year in high school and had so much energy and joy. And I was just so, again, as a filmmaker, just so excited about where she was headed. And so that's a big reason, why, on top of the other 2 girls were like, no, get the camera away from me. That's why I asked April if she wanted to, participate. And then, that's sort of the interesting journey you go on as a filmmaker with the people who let you film their lives, is that you then see that their lives are a lot more complex than what it seems like on the surface. And so that was my case with April, this girl who just was so bubbly and joyful, and who, to this day, that's a huge part of her personality, but she was dealing with a lot of complex issues in her life. And I'm just really grateful to her for allowing me to film and her family to be able to document that experience.
I've seen the movie, I think, 3 times now, and probably the scene that impacts me the most is with April and her dad going to the parenting class. What was that like to talk with the family?
Yeah, it was, it was very important for me from the beginning to be, obviously, ethically, I needed to be really transparent with what I was doing because I'm working with minors. And I wanted to film as much as I could at home, and April's parents, from the beginning, let me do so. But it was, it was a process because April was sharing with me some really, some sensitive information about her relationship with her family, and so it did take a while for me to build rapport with the family and get April's permission eventually to talk to her parents about some of these deeper issues that I was hoping to include in the film. I just tried throughout the process to be transparent with April about what I was doing, and then transparent with her parents as well. I had no, again, that's kind of the powerful but also sensitive aspect of being a filmmaker. When you're filming a film over many, many years, you have absolutely no clue where people's lives are gonna take you or the film. And so I had no clue that things would ultimately get much better between April and her father. So yeah, I don't know quite how to answer the question except that as there are a lot of ethical considerations as a filmmaker that you're making every day when people are sharing intimate and sensitive aspects of their lives with you. And I think at the end of the day, so much of it is about honoring their stories and honoring them as human beings. And yeah, I was really grateful to April's father for allowing me to, and all the men in that group for allowing us, myself and the cinematographer I was working with, Tiana, to film them. About a month ago, we were able to bring the film back to them, La Clinica and the Fruitvale, and show them the film, and it was a really powerful evening, and have a conversation about kind of what that process and experience was like. So, yeah.
I have a question mostly for Dania. I'm from England, and there's a very specific culture around football, soccer. It tends to be very straight white male, and there's a lot of toxic masculinity and violence associated with the culture. And it's different in America from what I see, but I'm kind of curious, as a woman of color leading a group of mostly people of color and who are mixed gender, what kind of challenges have you faced being in the soccer community?
In the general soccer community.
And also leading the football.
Okay, great. I like that question. It's so in the Futbolistas, it started off as predominantly young women. By the end of my time, as June noted, there were 3 girls in the Futbolista program. But I wasn't actually the main teacher by the end. I was already in grad school. So the reality was real. It was really difficult to have a co-ed group and to keep young women who did not have many experiences with soccer growing up feel safe enough to move their bodies in the way that soccer asks us to move in front of boys. And that was a challenge. And it was a challenge for me too personally because I never had that experience. I grew up always feeling confident in my body enough to play soccer. And so that was a gap for me of not being able to say, oh, I feel you. Because the reality is that I understand that I don't live in that experience. So one, it was just hard within the school, like to get the young men too to be understanding and open around that specific gender dynamic. So while that was a struggle, we were able to uplift, you know, some of the kind of like address the economic realities. So there were some, I kind of had to flow with what I had. And then in the larger sports community, I still struggle. There are club teams that I grew up playing in since I was 5 years old in Oakland that I think out of fear say, you know, either we already do what you're doing, so we don't need your expertise here. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure many of you are very well versed in liberatory pedagogies of play. But also that I think there's this fear, and I've become way better versed in my language than I was even during the time I was filming, because I am asking for a revolution. I am asking for us to move different, be different, think different, ask different questions. And that's shocking for people who don't want different. And so I've gotten the response of, we don't want to start the revolution here. I got that at UC Berkeley, I got that at rec programs here, and so it's something that I've had to like learn to use language differently to make it so that it doesn't come off as like, oh, she's trying to change things, but rather like, oh, she's trying to change things. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, and I love it. And I am here to disrupt and to shake things up because, as you've experienced, like the soccer culture is a little bit different, but the sports culture is not. You know, like if we look at who owns teams, who are owners, we still use that language. There's owners, there's players. There's a lot of power dynamics that still reflect, you know, that still favor white supremacy. At every sport, at every level, in every way. And so, yeah, it's a constant experience, and it's kind of like what I enjoy working in that space.
So I know Ben mentioned earlier, I'm sure other students as well would, you know, sometimes skip out of school, show up later in the day so they can participate in soccer, and I'm sure there was faculty that didn't, you know, necessarily enjoy that, right? And so I guess my question is, during the initial stages of implementing the program itself, did you experience any resistance from other staff that weren't on board with what you were trying to do? Because essentially it is a systems change, right? You talk about it right now, how it can be threatening to folks, you know, so I guess that's...
I was fortunate to have coworkers and colleagues that got it, so I didn't have resistance in that way. Over time, when students wouldn't go to class but would show up for soccer, and then their teachers would see them in my program, they would comment, and they would, but it wasn't like they were being combative. It was more like, hey, you couldn't have known this because you weren't in my 4th period science class, but so and so wasn't in class. So that I could follow up personally. But I was pretty blessed to be at Life where teachers, it was a team. We weren't working in silos, we were working together. So yeah, I had a smoother experience.
There's some questions in the back.
Yeah. Okay, in the back. I'd love to hear more from Ben. If anyone has a question for Ben, do.
That was my question for Ben, just regarding the DACA process. I know at the end of the film, it kind of said that it was still pending. So just kind of what happened after the film ended?
Yeah, so when the film was ended, it was, when we started recording, kind of like when Trump went into chair. So at the end, yeah, so I had my DACA for 2 years, and I had to reapply for it every 2 years. So when he went into, became a president, it was delayed for like 4 months. So I didn't got no response. I didn't know what the hell was going on until like 4 months after I had pretty much everything submitted, because it's set up so you get your permit at exactly the same month, kind of like the same day every 2 years. So when Trump became a president, it was just delayed, and that's when we finished finished the film. But even now, it's still like I applied, and it's still like right now it's 2 months delayed. So it's just, at this point, it's just kind of like taking a chance. You get it or you don't get it. But I think after that was kind of one of the reasons why I left school, because my financial aid was like, well, you don't got your papers, you don't got your permit, you don't got none of that. So I was like, all right, well, whatever. So I learned how to survive and make money on my own. So I played for like 3 semesters, the whole year, back in when it was a semester. No, it was a quarter. So now it's a semester. But then after that, it was just too much because I ended up having a baby too. So I had to take, it was sad to kind of choose, but I had to choose my family. And hopefully going back, I'm halfway there. I'm running my businesses. So I'm planning to come back and kind of like change my major to business and finish school, hopefully here too.
This is just a comment more than a question. It's an expression of gratitude, just feeling really thankful for seeing this film today. And it's a real breath of fresh air to see social justice met at the intersection of pleasure and joy and play. Versus talking about social justice and being overwhelmed by trauma and systems of oppression and not seeing a lot of solutions. And this just reminded me a lot of pleasure activism, and it just made me feel good. So I wanted to share that and just say thank you for your work, and thank you for this film.
Now that the film's out, people have been seeing it, do you feel any pressure to be like really active in the community and to get back to school and finish that kind of stuff? Now that you're facing and things like that.
Yeah, when we first started the film, it was more kind of like, all right, the film is done, and then we're just gonna go show it. But then I started meeting like a lot of people like you guys, and some people had their full careers and offering to help. And that kind of like, I'm always been involved kind of in community. Even when I was with Dania, he was kind of like, all right, let's try to do that for that teacher or that other teacher, or I ended up teaching after school program. But I don't feel like I was committed until I kind of became independent and I moved out of my parents. I had to decide kind of like if I want to make money and make business, or I could be a community guy. So I ended up doing both. I did a social enterprise. So I opened a screen printing shop. I print t-shirts and apparel. And now we're doing a movement. That's one of my designs, one of my first designs. And then now we're doing a kind of movement of the Hello Immigrant, which is pretty much going around and telling the stories of, it's just starting, it's not there, but it's going around the Bay Area and telling the stories of immigrant business owners. And since there, we have built a lot of relationships around the Bay Area. One of the main ones, and that I'm working on right now, it's a partner with the organization called No Immigrants, No Spice. So, and then we're doing our first food festival in Oakland this Saturday, which is a big thing. It's been a lot around the United States. It has been in New York, Florida, San Francisco news. It's been all around, so, and then, yeah, but I haven't felt like I have to. It's kind of me, it has always been in me to give back, something that my grandma always told me was like, if you have too much and you don't need the other one, just give it away, especially when you're poor, you will learn that, that you just give out, whatever yours is trash, someone else is the best thing they could get. So that's where I come from. Yeah, the food festival. So you will have to go to my Instagram to buy the tickets. Because we pretty much like almost sold out. Yeah. My Instagram is called Oakland Authentic, and yeah, so you can find it there, or you could go to the No Immigrants No Spice Instagram, And you have to buy their tickets. I think we checked today. I had a meeting before this screening, and we only have like 30 more tickets, and we're gonna be sold out for the food festival. It's in Oakland. It's about Broadway in the Impact Pub. It's a $20 entrance, and there's several tickets you can buy, whatever package you want to buy. But yeah, that's where we are now. Yeah. So if you really want to go, you probably want to buy your ticket like as tonight. Hopefully, we got it.
We have time for about one more question, and then our panel will hang out for about 20 minutes until 4. I know classes end about 3:40, so if there's one or two more questions. Yes.
This is for Dania and June. What advice do you have for young women of color who have big dreams of making a difference in the community?
Yeah, the question was if I have any advice for young women of color that have big dreams in their lives. Well, first, don't stop dreaming. I want to say something meaningful. Because it's a good question, because a lot of times our dreams are shut down before we can even dream them. There's something I've been thinking about recently, is about creativity. Like, we don't really need more of what we've seen. We need different. We need to imagine different things. And as we get older, I find that our imaginations like shrink, until it's like little robots in our screens and neck problems. Like, so in terms of dreaming, it's like being creative and changing and giving yourself permission to change, and also giving yourself permission to be a boss. And you know, I have imposter syndrome all the time. I'm sitting here right now up on stage, like every single person in here could be up on stage. For real, because I know it, because I know that each of you have an incredible story. Your families have incredible stories. The fact that you're even sitting here right now is probably an incredible story. And yeah, give yourself permission to like continue to be creative, and then within that, you become indispensable. When you're constantly innovative and you're coming up with ideas and you're working on yourself, you know, and I don't mean self in a selfish way, I mean when you're really, I talked about this in class today with Dr. Liberty's class. Gloria Nsagdua talks about conocimiento, it's knowledge. And two of the ways that we kind of get through transformation is by doing inner work and public acts. And when those aren't in sync, right, if you ain't doing the inner work, your public act is false. And so there's something about that. So I'm leaving you with a couple jumbled thoughts, but creativity, be a boss, give yourself permission to be incredible, shine, you know, because you notice it.
Adding to that, don't give up. It's very important. I think she taught me a very good lecture of every time. From mistakes you learn. And I think the best to reach to the top is by making all those mistakes you need to make. And as a woman, I'm pretty sure it's hard, but it's, you know, it's like just don't give up. I think that's the main point, don't give up.
I really have nothing to add. That is what I was gonna say. And that's how this film got made. I never made a film of this, like, magnitude in my life. And it was a vision and a dream and community, and the love of friends and family that is what made this film happen. And so, yeah, dream big, keep dreaming, and be tenacious, you know? And great things will happen. Well, with that, please join me in thanking our panel. pretty amazing to look out, echoing a little bit what Dania said. Only 25 students needed to be here for class today, and to look out and see over 150 people here, a lot on your own time. That's pretty powerful. That says a lot. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the classes that came. I know we had a lot from the social work, so that's excellent. Special shout out there. Evaluation sheets, you'll see those box up there. Please put those. We really value them. I look at every one of them myself. Usually I enter the data myself. We're a small operation. Speaking of that, Ben, I want to talk to you about your t-shirts, the CSSJ Needs t-shirts, so I think we got a partnership there. And thanks again. Don't forget to sign in, and have a good rest of your day.
Also, going back to Instagram, if you want to follow the film on Instagram, Futbolistas for the number 4 live film, and we're also at futbolistasforlifefilm.com if you want to get in touch.